Ever since The Alchemist dropped this project, I was like, oh my days, I need to make something like this for you guys to show you how to do this. I was blown away. Production is just super fire. And I know a lot of you find it hard to make samples that really sound authentic. So I'm giving you some tips today that will elevate your boring samples to something special, so make sure you stay tuned to the very end. So we're taking two little mini chords and we're growing them into something great. And then I had so many of you asking me, can you do an Isaiah Falls tutorial? And I'm like, Lucid did one and it was fire, but I was like, maybe there's something that I can add or just look at it slightly differently. So that's what we're gonna do. I was like, why don't I just use this sample and then develop it into like an Isaiah Falls thing? Because then kind of similar, but kind of different. So you're gonna learn a load about both of these things that complement each other, and why not pack them all into one value packed tutorial for you guys. So without further ado,
oh hi, here we are again. When I'm thinking about making soul samples, I always try and challenge myself to make them feel as authentic as possible, so that something that could be ripped from an old record, crate digging, something that sounds like it's coming from a spaghetti western of the 1970s or a film noir film. Or I always think about the limitations of recording back in the day. So you only had a certain amount of tracks that you could use. Everything was recorded to tape and it was played by real musicians. All the decisions I make with the instrumentation and the way that I play the instruments reflects how a real musician would think. The best way you can learn this is just by immersing yourself in old music. There's some great channels on YouTube where you can hear these things that Conductor Williams and people like this just pull stuff from. Now, these guys have extensive vinyl collections, but we're so lucky today that we have such a resource like YouTube where we can just crate dig without even leaving the house. When The Alchemist and these guys go to make these beats, like they're pulling a tiny little portion of these records out and just looping one or two bars sometimes. That is the essence of hip hop. The thing that I loved when I heard Munyon Canyon was the drums are not even knocking, but your head is just moving and it's hypnotic. It's nostalgic. Immediately, someone like Larry June can just flow over that. 2 Chainz can just flow over that. That's what I wanted to achieve with the first part of this sample here. So I've divided it, obviously you can see here, up into 2 sections, the A and the B. And the A section being that Alchemist 70s soul, but also that kind of cinematic soundtrack vibe to it. And I'm achieving that by this chord progression and a top line melody that's, again, it's got some of my trademark things in here. I'm in the key of C major or A minor really, so we're just using all the white notes. And the first section is simple. It's just got 2 chords and it's just a minor 4-1 progression. And I haven't used any passing chords or anything. We're at 155 BPM, but really it feels like half of that. My maths is terrible. What is that, 70 something? I mean, the classic boom bap is around about the 90 BPM. So yeah, you're kind of 180, but between like 80 to 90 BPM, you're at a good place. Obviously, you can stretch these things out. And so you don't really need to program your vintage samples, be so rigid about it, but it kind of helps me to get in that headspace. I mean, when I heard that Munyon Canyon, I was like, yeah, okay, cool. I'm going to make something similar to this. And those 2 chords, I mean, you're just looking at a D minor triad to an A minor triad in their most basic form, just 3 notes. You're building them from the root, and that with the D chord, that would just be your D, your flat third, which is your F, and your 5th, which is an A. If you just add 1 more note, you're gonna pull in the minor 7th. You can see here, F, A, C, and the E, playing a D minor 9 chord just in a root position here. I'm kind of bing dong. See how I'm kind of holding that bass note in a little bit. It's hard to draw this in sometimes. You just have to feel it out on the keyboard. I promise you, if you just practice your chords a little bit, you'll start to get some of these rhythms. Just have a quick listen to this whole. And then I just move to this A minor, and you can see that it shares a lot of the notes with the D minor chord here. I'm always thinking melodically, as I always stress. So you're going from like the D minor 9 to like the A minor 11 chord. And then I'm just thinking melodically here, going G, D. And this forms the basis for the whole sample to then come and build around. Holding the chords out already gives you that solemn, nostalgic kind of feel, which is perfect for that Larry June. I added these little sprinkles, as I call them, just playing like and so together again. And the reason I put it on another track was I found that these were a bit loud and I couldn't really get them to turn down, so that's the only reason that they're here. For this sound, I'm just using the Rhodes, the LA Custom Bright 80s. I just think Atmosphere's got some really authentic sounding Rhodes and EPs, although Lvrs, because Lvrs has got an incredible 3 EPs there. I added Vinyl Crackle and kept it really loud because I felt like listening to that Whole Life is Beautiful album, you hear a lot of background noise and stuff there. The next thing I want to touch on is the bass, and I used Scarby Rickenbacker as usual. And I use this bass to add a lot of movement. Check these 3 items out together and you're already nearly there. Notice that the bass is not really quantized too much here. I've left it quite loose. I just played this on the MIDI keyboard. You can see the notes here are not on grid, and that adds to the authenticity, because back in the day there was no quantize, obviously. I wanted to really shut my eyes and feel like I'm in a recording studio in like the early 70s. I am going on doing this phrase, which is just jumping from the D, F, A, E, D, do 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 da do 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 da do da do 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 da do, because the chords are so static. Really helps move the sample along. If your chords are very legato, just played out, try making your bass dance about. And all my little fills here are just within the A minor pentatonic scale. If you listen to enough of these kind of bass lines, you start to think like a bass player. And as I said before, like, you want to think like the musician that you're trying to emulate here. And these are just classic moves that bass players do all the time. So if you approach notes from a fifth away, or a whole step away, or even a semitone away, and do. And I tend to do more busy fills at the end of like 8-bar phrases, because that is a natural point of tension before we release back into bar 1 again, or bar 9 here. I didn't then repeat the 8-bar phrase again. There's variation, slight variation, that you've got 2 notes here, 3 notes here. I think every instrument, I think of it as being like hooky in itself, but I deviate away from my main theme or hook to slightly change up what I'm doing. So I knew that I only wanted a couple more elements, but I really wanted a lead element. So I actually went for a native flute, because flutes were massive in the 70s. I went for the Native American flute. And again, I just played a simple melody. You can see it here. Harmonized it here. But essentially, this is just 2 very simple nursery rhyme melodies playing at the same time, and halfway through they split off and they're like slightly different things, but one is a kind of a lower melody and one is the higher melody. Imagine I've got 2 flute players and they're both sort of playing their simple little nursery rhyme melodies, and then I went up here, but again, the second time around I slightly varied it, but not by much. Look, just at the end I just went always gives me that Ghibli kind of Japanese flavor when I use sounds like this flute. I just stuck a bit of reverb on there. My processing is minimal, because when you put in great stuff, you don't need many plugins to make it sound good. Always think about the information you're putting in and not necessarily about how many millions of plugins. I put in a tiny little vocal chop each time from this on Arcade. Just thought it fitted so nicely there. It's almost like the first one I dropped on as well. I was like, oh yeah, that works. And you just got to use your taste, use your ears, and kind of say, yeah, that works nicely. I did this felt mallet, and this is free. Go cop this. This company are great. Somerville Prototype. You can pay what you want. So if you want to give them a donation, they'll really appreciate it. And I just added a tiny little extra melody here. So stuff that I just sing out. And then the icing on the cake, the mellotron, using the Arturia one on the strawberry flute. Variations on the chords, nothing complicated again. D minor 9, yeah, A minor 11, because there's our D. But look, not even quantizing this, guys. And then drum wise, I'm looking at Addictive Drums, and I just went for this kit here. Labs have got some really nice 70s free kits as well. And yeah, if you're getting something out of this, guys, go cop a free mini kit. Follow me on Instagram at bsticks production. Ask me about a one-to-one. I can go more in depth with any of these concepts that I'm going into today with you. I pulled in this beat, I modified it slightly, but I thought it really fit that Runyon Canyon kind of vibe. Super simple, but just gives you that little head nod that, you know, a rapper or an MC can just do their thing over. And that was it, like. Second half, bring some more variation. So I just added a really simple string line here, just playing like these couple notes, and I bounced it down because the MIDI was acting funny, and added pizzicato, like for a change in texture, playing these little falling lines. Pan them out a little bit as well, as you can see, to right and left. Make use of your panning, your sonic stage. That's pretty much it for the first part of the sample. It was just done. I just knew that was all it needed. So we moved into the second half, where I changed the chord progression. My ADHD ass could not just have one section, so we had to go into a second section. Just be greedy. Why not, man? You need to do it, you know. Just change it up. Anyway, I preempted this section with these 2 rim shots. Tap tap, and we're in. I didn't think I needed any other introduction, but you know, that element of surprise always works nicely. Let's zone in on the EP. Important part of this sample. Went for this whirly, like the sound of it. Sounded kind of Isaiah-y. And look at my bass line, rising, 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 rising. And all I'm doing here, we've got the D to an E, so a 4, 5, 6. Then we're going up to this, like, well, we're doing like a 5 chord to get us back to the D. So like, it's a jazz or R&B move where you do the 5 of your target chord, the 5 being an A, so playing an A major, and then a C sharp diminished, because you can play a diminished chord half a step underneath your target chord. And actually the A major and the C sharp diminished share a lot of the same common tones, so actually work really well. And the bass moving, just some of these chords are pushed as well. You can see, like, that means, so before the bar, that's a classic R&B trick. So we're like going dum da dum da dum, you know, really common. You're gonna hear that loads in your soul and R&B stuff. I mean, similar chord, which are like chord extensions here. You've got that D minor 9 again. Let's just check that is a D minor 9 in root position. Yep, it is. Then we're going to like an E, but it's not a straight E minor chord, because I'm actually playing like an E altered dominant chord, and I'm kind of thinking of it as like the 5 chord that wants to pull to the A minor, our 1 chord, but we don't go to the A minor. Instead, we break your expectation and we play the F major 7th chord. Beautiful voicing here, just root position again. I've gone for a lot of root position voicings here, but in this instance they just work. And look at the fact that this E note is running along the top on almost every chord. Again, I'm thinking melodically. Got a few little joining notes, so like this. Just thinking like a musician, as I said before. The velocities here are just as I played them in, and I wanted to add a bit more weight to this sound, so I did a pad, just again playing kind of variations of these chords, but a lot of the same common tones. You're going to find there's a lot of common tones within these chords because they're all in the same key. And I used the Sky Keys for this sound. Wanted like more of an affected sound, because whereas the first half was more just real organic instruments, so I went for this Foggy Lights preset. That classic kind of phasey R&B, the Weeknd, Party Next Door. Put sample delay using the Huss effect, where just you do a sample delay on there, stereo one. You delay one side by about 300 samples, and you get this widening effect. Just be careful when you collapse things down to mono that you don't just lose it entirely, but I don't really care. I went for a synth bass sound in this part of the sample, and I just went for that kind of envelope modulated bass of acid. Now, the one thing I don't like about C major or A minor is that you can't get that low with your sub bass. That's why there's certain keys that just work super well for sub bass. Watch what happens if I now like drop the whole sample down by like 4 semitones or something. It's going to sound way more bassy and meaty here. And that's just how our ear perceives sound, because the notes in A minor just can't get low enough. They're in the octave that you want to play them, they're a bit high, so that's why the bass sounds a little bit weedy. But that's my only sort of drawback about working in, you know, in C major or A minor. But for tutorials, it's really helpful for me to show you this stuff. Again, synth bass, I kind of took lead from Butterflies, which has this rising octave bass. Another bass line you're going to hear tons in neo soul and R&B, where your bass is just jumping up in octaves, and between those jumps you've just got little fills. And then again, look, end of phrases here, a longer fill, a bigger fill. And then the second time around on the EP specifically, added some more top notes here. So we go. I just programmed a very simple drum beat out with that hat on the offbeat, kind of taking that inspiration from house music but slowing it right down, because obviously in the house music you've got the hats on the offbeat, so I kind of went for that here. And then I recorded some guitars in, just had a little fun with it, with some chords and licks, and that's something that Isaiah's got a ton of. If you need guitars, hit me up, I got you. But yeah, you wanna add some simple little guitars, and that's not too hard. Just find some notes that work, get a cheap guitar, or go on Splice, grab some samples, and you can actually make it work. You can make it work. Added these toms in, check it, and a vocal from Arcade. I kind of thought like a live drummer as well. Added these like kicks in on these. Keeping it moving, as you know how we do. And I really love this sample. It's simple, but it says exactly what it needs to say. So guys, if you've got something like this, go check some of my other tutorials, like, follow, subscribe, and all that jazz and all of that. And I will catch you on the next one.